Hey, welcome back. Let's start in a standing position. Bring the awareness to the top of the head, hands, feet, walking, keeping a very small amount of awareness on the visual field and keeping your awareness in the 5 points. Bring your awareness to your mind. So only enough awareness as is required for you to not run into something. Awareness of the body, mostly in the 5 points, the extremities, awareness and vision. You don't need very much, 3 to 5%, just to know where you're going. And then place the vast majority of your awareness, 80%, 90%, on being aware of mental content. A few details to add to your awareness of consciousness. Even while you're moving, you should have the sense, if you're doing this properly, that consciousness is not moving. Your consciousness is not located in some particular place in space. It's not moving with your body. The 5 external senses are moving with the body in terms of where they seem to be located to some degree, especially vision and tactile. Those seem to be very much rooted in space. But consciousness is not moving like that. So you'll know that you have touched down on consciousness and you're sitting in the theater. It may be a bit more helpful to think about a play. If you went and watched a play, there's things happening actually on the stage in front of you. There's people, sights, smells, sounds, and so on and so forth. And they're forming intentions. They're making decisions. They're taking actions up there on the stage. Likewise, your mind is producing all sorts of content, including emotions, intentions. It's trying to move around and do stuff and get involved in stuff. But the mind's only job when you're resting in a state of mere awareness is to simply be ready, fully prepared for whatever occurs in the next moment. Not by trying to anticipate it, but by simply entering a state that's much like you've done with tactile awareness, visual awareness, sound, smell, and taste, which is that you open the field and have it fully ready for whatever occurs next, simply in virtue of the fact that it's not stuck on what just happened. So you can see why there's a benefit to training the five external senses for first. You've done a little bit of this work already. You have some sense of what it would be like to just let the mind rest in a state of non doing. But obviously, this is easier to do when sitting. It's only a little bit harder to do when standing. It is much, much, much harder to do while moving because whereas the five external senses seem to be moving around the room, consciousness is not like that. Consciousness is not located in space. It's not walking around with you inside your head somewhere. So do your very best. These are not mystical statements. Do your very best to simply observe as an audience member for the theater performance inside your mind. Simply observe whatever occurs there without judging, without getting involved, without letting the mind do anything else other than simply observe, simply watch. Unfortunately, the more that I describe consciousness to you, the more you're going to try to imagine. what consciousness is like, rather than simply observing the contents of consciousness. So, consciousness is not black like the back of your eyelids. Consciousness shouldn't be imagined as if it's being still. Consciousness shouldn't be imagined as if it's like space. You should notice if your mind is imagining all of these things, that those are contents appearing in your consciousness, just like anything else. So it's fine to observe that you're imagining that consciousness is resting somewhere in the middle of your room and not doing anything, or that consciousness is like this or like that, or that consciousness is somehow black, dark space extending through whatever. But that's all imagination. And that being imagination is just like anything else you visualize in your mind. So it's fine to observe that as contents of consciousness, but don't get caught up in imagining or visualizing what consciousness is like. Even though you will in the beginning, it's natural because you're trying to figure out how to grab onto it. There's nothing to grab onto. Not that consciousness is nothing, but the only way to become aware of consciousness is to become aware of its content, and then gaps start to form between the content. And then because mind is formless and mind is aware, it begins becoming aware of its own formless, aware condition. So don't get wrapped up in imagining it. That's the pathway to delusion, not the pathway to knowing what you really are. Carry on. The best I can. I'm going to try to remind you of the instructions. Let the awareness rest in a state of observation that's like a mirror, choiceless, decisionless, non doing. You have to have a minimum amount of awareness penetrating the body and the vision to not fall over. If you're standing or you're walking, and obviously, this way of doing this practice is not something you would take in exactly this way into your everyday life because you'd look quite strange if you only have 3 to 5% of your awareness in the body and in vision. Nonetheless, do your best with the vast majority of your mind to enter a state of non doing. You're not deciding to do anything, you're not modifying anything, you're not trying to figure anything out. Just rest and observe. And observation in this case is not an active process. The mind knows, the mind is aware, the mind is cognizant. The mind's nature is to give rise to experience. So you don't have to actively do something to have the experience of the experience. Just get yourself out of the way. Whatever occurs in the mind will occur in the mind. You don't have to do anything to experience it other than simply point the bandwidth of your awareness, so to speak, mainly at mental content. And then, having done so, use only the bare minimum of effort and intent to remain in a state where your only intent, your only choice, your only deliberate action is to not make a further choice, to not make a further intent, to not perform a further deliberate action. In other words, you are doing non doing, mirror like, choiceless, decisionless awareness. Okay, bringing this now to a more practical version of this exercise. Bring about equal portions. Awareness to the tactile field, front, back, left, right, up, down. To the visual field, front, back, left, right, up, down. Auditory field, front, back, left, right, up, down. The olfactory field, front, back, left, right, up, down. The gustatory field, front, back, left, right, up, down. And the mental field. For most of you, this will already be borderline impossible, so just remain stationary. If you can keep all 6 fields open, which you probably can't at this point, then you can begin moving slowly, walking slowly. All right, my friends. Since one of the sessions didn't come through at 8:30 tonight, London time, I've already added it to this particular playlist. I'm going to do one more bonus session so that we have all of the 15 sessions that I promised. And we'll wrap up this evening not with a standing session, but with a seated session. So for those of you who are in the practice of hanging out with me at 8:30 p.m. London time anyway, just mark that time down for the final session of this retreat together. Okay? All right. See you then.